Hey guys, welcome back.
I've talked about doing what makes you happy is really important. I consider myself very lucky that I can say,
I do what I want.
not many people can say that they got to pursue their passion project before the age of 30. But here we are.
Hey, look at us.
Look at us.
Huh?
Who would have thought?
Not me.
Since I have complete control of these, we're going to do a deep dive on Star Wars and Season 2 of Andor. So let's.
Dive on in.
That clip is from American Dad, which reminds me of this.
Hi, Darth. You got any bags, or did you leave Mrs. Vader at home?
Wow, it's you? Are we already out of our own characters?
What?
How's the construction going?
Oh, fantabulously. Remember how last time they skimmed along a trench and then blew it up by shooting through a hole?
Yeah?
Well, now there's no trench.
Great. Is there a hole?
Yes.
All of the Family Guy Star Wars specials were seriously so great. I love how they were running out of characters by the time the third one came out, so they leaned into it.
It's a trap! It's a trap!
Also, whose cat? Someone get your cat.
I watch a lot of Star Wars YouTube, obviously. I've mentioned Ickhart's Ladder before, and he has a lot of non-Star Wars content. Another one is Corey's Data Pad. I know I've talked about Star Wars Explained here before.
They think they get to define what normal is, and anyone who doesn't fit into their little box becomes a target, just for existing.
And yeah, I've said you can look at Star Wars however you want. But it's really hard to watch Andor and not see it as a political allegory. The Empire has always been a thinly veiled reference to Nazis. Anakin Skywalker was a straight-up fascist.
Well, if it works.
This is a good time to bring up this shirt. The Death Star was a political allegory for the impending threat of nuclear annihilation that resulted from the Cold War. It's also worth noting that George Lucas is on record saying that the rebels were based on the Viet Cong. I'll have to get on the Star Wars soapbox for a little bit, so give me a second. Okay, now that I'm up here, I'll rant a bit. Starting with Ki-Adi-Mundi. That's this guy. He represents everything wrong with the Jedi Order. His two brains represent Jedi hubris. He always acted like he was the smartest guy in the room. To him, the Jedi couldn't possibly be destroyed. That's why he got slaughtered by his own troops. He didn't believe that a Sith Lord could possibly be seen in the galaxy. Luke Skywalker was absolutely right to say this in The Last Jedi.
The legacy of the Jedi is failure, hypocrisy, hubris.
Which reminds me of this.
Now, everyone talks about how she defeated Luke Skywalker in a duel, and yeah, that's a double stack of baby-back bull. But the thing that gets my gears a-grinding is Rey's relationship with the Millennium Falcon. Right off the bat, Rey knows how to fix the Falcon better than Han Solo and Chewbacca. Namely Chewbacca, who canonically knows every bolt and quirk of that ship. But there's one scene in The Rise of Skywalker that just bugs the hell out of me way more than all the others. Poe Dameron is using light speed skipping. Sorry.
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and that'd end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
Poe Dameron is using light speed skipping to flee TIE fighters in the Falcon. And at one point, Chewie growls something at him, and Poe responds with,
Rey's not here, is she?
The implication is that Rey would be doing a much better job of escaping the TIE fighters and flying the Falcon, and Poe is effectively agreeing, saying, yeah, well, I'm the best you got right now. To be clear, Poe is the best pilot in all the Resistance, and arguably the galaxy, provided Wedge Antilles fell off due to age. Yet Rey is better? And before someone says, because the Force, to me, no. All Jedi came stock with the Force, but many weren't crack pilots. In fact, both Anakin and Luke were great pilots because both had a passion for it and training since youth.
Now this is pod racing.
I treated you too harshly.
Obi-Wan, on the other hand, was a powerful Force user, but wasn't nearly as good a pilot as Anakin because he hated flying. Rey had none of that, but she was still better than everyone else.
Good thing I'm already on the soapbox because I'm about to rant again.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Specifically about the sequel trilogy. I've made my feelings on that very clear. J.J. Abrams ruined the Star Trek franchise, then tried ruining the Star Wars franchise. That's 2 Star franchises, J.J. Not cool. But yeah, people who aren't J.J. Abrams have made really good Star Wars content. Like Andor. Here's a clip talking about the security droids.
X-Unit security droids just may have been one of the Imperial military's most valuable assets. In a galaxy where the Imperial Senate had strictly prohibited the creation of any battle droid units, the Galactic Empire would waste no time and was able to quickly find a loophole in this law by marketing their new KX series droids actually as security droids. However, they were programmed without the standard restrictions that a security droid should have against harming any sentient or living life forms. These droids were programmed, however, to recognize and defer to Imperial military officers with the ranking of lieutenant or higher, and follow any given commands from them. You could see how that may not end well. These droids were designed with exaggerated human proportions, but with the mobility of the best human athletes. They were able to operate with a variety of equipment and weapons, as well as carry hundreds of pounds of gear without ever becoming exhausted. These droids would also commonly be used to guard Imperial installations, such as the Imperial refinery on Kashyyyk, the mining headquarters on Ilum, and even Fortress Inquisitorius. It's honestly pretty scary to think how powerful the Galactic Empire could have been had they been able to use these KX series droids as their main fighting force over their regular recruited stormtrooper army.
I like how there's an in-universe explanation for them. The galaxy would naturally be apprehensive of droids after the Clone Wars. It makes perfect sense to not mention that K2 straight up killed protesters on Gorman. Speaking of trauma inflicted by the Clone Wars, I have to mention The Mandalorian. I'm a big fan, and a lot of people are. I think Disney is using Grogu as a little green golden goose by slapping his face on everything. Not that I'm not happily buying that Grogu merchandise, though.
Shut up and take my money!
I'm just not sure if Disney could have predicted Grogu's overnight success.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
The last thing I'll say about Andor is I don't think there was any of this.
Whoa. There's still plenty of meat on that bone.
Andor has a finite end, which I think was reached in a satisfying way. It was also refreshing seeing a more raw, realistic version of Star Wars. There's usually this fantasy element to Star Wars that just wasn't in Andor.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Which was the point. Andor showed us a side of Star Wars we don't usually see. But that's the reality of war. Doesn't the Empire use propaganda to downplay its atrocities? Doesn't Disney kind of do the same? That's weird, right? I have to include this clip of Sam Whiter. He's done a lot of voiceover work on Star Wars, most notably as Maul.
But the ideas that have gone into his films have permeated our culture and has become, part of the lexicon of our culture. So, yes, my fandom in Lucasfilm and in Star Wars is because I am a fan of George Lucas, which is why when I saw the prequels and I was, old enough to be one of those guys who's like, this is crap, man. Yeah, nah. And I'm just like, I want to watch this more closely because this is George Lucas that did this. What is he going for here? Why is this so different than what I expected it would be? Because I've been thinking about Star Wars prequels my entire life, ever since the originals came out. I knew he would do these. This is not at all what I expected. And because it wasn't what I expected, I learned a valuable lesson, which is don't repeat yourself. Try something new. Push yourself in a new direction that you've never been in before. And I learned that from the prequels, being like, this is why I'm watching these movies over and over again in the theater because they're so different than what I expected. And then because I was able to get on his page, I was suitable to be brought in to work on Star Wars in various capacities. Because at that point, when Dave would be like, well, it's kind of like Qui-Gon Jinn. I'm like, I always felt like Qui-Gon was like, and Dave would be like, the father that Anakin needed. Yeah, right. And then the father, he falls, he's like, no, it's like the father, goes away, and then it's the older brother that has to raise the kid, and he's not ready. We're like, that's what George was saying, right? He's like, yeah, I think so. And because we were studying those movies, we were like, what is George thinking here? What is going on? So anyway, I'm a huge fan of anything that guy comes up with. Huge.
But he talks about people who just get it. J.J. Abrams doesn't, but Dave Filoni does.
I'll just say what it is, because they came all this way, and I know what they really want to talk about, which is what's in Season 2.
Ahsoka Season 2 might go down as one of the greatest Star Wars projects of all time. Listen to this.
So half of it is a really, really big battle. Yeah. There's going to be a war in our Star Wars, like an all-out throwdown on a scale, as best as I can do it, as best as John and I can afford it. And Thrawn will be involved. We will see a lot more of him. You'll see a lot more of Ezra. You'll see a lot more of Hera. Because you guys made such a big deal about it, I put a lot more Chopper in. And so, yes, a lot more Chopper. And because of the way you guys are about it, he does some really messed up stuff. I don't know why he does these things, but they all seem to like it. And then because you guys asked for it, and because John's been playing with him so much and I want my toy back, we put Zeb and Ahsoka now.
It's really that simple. But with that, I'll roll out.
They see me rolling, they hating.
Remember to like and subscribe and do all the YouTube stuff, which I guess means hitting the notification bell. If you subscribe, you'll technically be part of my cult, the Dan Fam, but I promise it's not a weird cult. So subscribe to become a Danimal, but be gentle.
Peace out, y'all. May the force be with you.